special edition of our Science Cafe, as always, offered and organized by the Theoretical Physics Laboratory of the University of Turku. And this is a very special event because we are in some way trying to combine science and art. This is a Moon Jazz Jam. As you probably know or have heard, it's divided into parts. We will begin with a jam session where Professor Esko Valtaoja and pianist Fabrizio Mocata will dialogue about the moon. And after that, we have a panel discussion. We are eager to have questions also from the public, as always in the Science Cafe spirit. And we will have with us two panelists, besides of course Esko and Fabrizio and myself as a moderator. And we are very honored to have here Professor Atso Almila and docent Kimi Kärki. But this in the second half of the event. For now, I'm very happy to introduce Professor Esko Valtaoja. He doesn't need any introduction, I think, for all of you, Esko, and Fabrizio Mocata.
In the beginning was the moon, not the sun, because the sun is always the same. It goes up, it goes down, it goes up, it goes down, utterly boring. Nothing happens ever, especially in the south, where there are really no seasons at all. But the moon was different. In fact, the word for moon and the word for measure, they come from the same Indo-European root, mi. Because the moon was for measure. The moon was changing. It gave us the idea of time. It gave us the first calendars. The first moon calendar, maybe 35,000 years old. 2 full cycles of the moon described in a piece of an antler. Moon was always changing. There was something happening. There was time. There was abstract thought that it forced on people. There was change. The moon was born every month. It grew, it reached maturity, full moon, and then it decayed, and then it died. It vanished totally from the sky for 3 days. What happened? How would the moon die, and how would it be reborn? Why did Jesus rise on the 3rd day? Because of the moon. In myths, legends, stories, heroes went down to the netherworld, they died, something happened, and they had to wait for release for 3 days. That is why Jesus also rose up on the 3rd day, all from the moon. The philosopher Plato told in one of his dialogues what happened. When God made the moon in the sky, waxing and waning, he combined the months in a year, and so all the creatures, by a happy providence, began to have a general insight into the relations of a number with number. Maybe the moon helped mankind to the first abstract thoughts, The idea that the moon, even if it changes, it is the same, and even if it vanishes totally, you don't see it, you'll have to think about the moon as an abstract idea, down there somewhere in the netherworld, and then returning the same moon again and again. We still have moon calendars. The Islamic world follows the moon calendar. That is why the Ramadan starts at different times every year, sometimes in winter, sometimes in summer. The Easter, our holiday, follows the old Judaic moon calendar. That's why it changes also almost a full month, because you have to calculate from the phases of the moon. We have boring names for the different moons of the year. January, February, March. I'll tell you all that. Other people, well, the Finns have a little bit more descriptive names, but some people, like the Chukchi in northern Siberia, reindeer hunters, herders, they have their own moons, like all the original people. The Chukchi, the first moon of the year, was the moon of the old reindeer stag. The second moon, moon of bitter cold udders. Moon of full udders. And now comes spring. Moon of newborn reindeer calves. Moon of water when the sun melts. Moon of first leaves. Moon of warm weather. Moon of shedding antlers. Autumn is coming. Moon of light frost. Moon of pairing reindeer. Moon of reindeer's winter back. Moon of shorter days. And so ends one lunar year. So each and every season had 3 moons. 12 altogether. But sometimes, because the 12 times 30, it's only 360, and there are 365 days in a year. So there's 5 days always left over, so sometimes you have to add an extra moon there in one of the seasons to keep up the time, the seasons, and the moons. And what was this moon? It was the blue moon. was not God, but goddess. The goddess Moon, Earth Mother, who similarly all the time was also the goddess of the moon. Because moon was the important thing, not the sun. It was only with agriculture that sun started to become important. Of course it gave light every day, but it did it regularly, so it was rather boring, as I said already. But with the agriculture, the sun started to become more important. There was, many assume, a shift from the religion of the mother goddess to a male god, sun. Still, in most languages, the sun is male, the moon is female. There are of course changes, we are not very consistent with Homo sapiens. The Germans have Der Mond and Die Sonne, and the Finns, the original Finnish Ugric people, they had Päivätär and Kuutar, so they both were female. We are very great with ladies, we Finns. And of course, the moon was important because you could see that it was influencing everything here on Earth. There were the tides, and there was the menstruation of the women. Very clear to see the connection. The moon brings up the waters, brings them down. Similarly, the water of life, blood in females. That's why also the moon is female. Linnaeus wrote in his Natural History 2000 years ago, the moon is the star of our life. When she approaches the earth, she fills all bodies, while when she recedes, she empties them. Even the blood of men grows and diminishes with the light of the moon, and leaves and herbage also feel the same influence, since the lunar energy penetrates all things. Amazingly, some people still believe this. You can go to Alko and buy biodynamic wine. It's wine that's been cultivated according to the phases of the moon, going back to Rudolf Steiner, anthroposophy, and perhaps 10,000-year-old belief. Well, that's what everybody believed. And so we had to have, like the moon was growing, waxing. What do you do when the moon grows? You sow seeds, they start to grow, you marry, and the wife starts to grow. You give birth, you start wars, everything positive, expansion. But then the moon starts to wane, becomes smaller and smaller, slide down towards its monthly death. What do you do when the moon dies? You harvest, of course, you fell down trees. Even the kids believe it's a very bad thing to cut trees when the moon was growing. You did it when the moon was waning. You wash clothes. I'm not quite certain where that comes from, but anyway, that was a regulation. And you, of course, you make peace since you start wars when the moon is growing. Waxing, waning, cyclical, affecting everything here on Earth. We, the children of the moon goddess, penetrated by the lunar energies. And we still have it. Remember Creedence Clearwater Revival. I see man on the horizon. I see trouble on the way. But moon doesn't really influence anything here on Earth, except the tides. Even the menstrual cycle is a coincidence, because other apes, chimpanzees, have very different cycles, and even the female's cycle in Homo sapiens, there's a wide range of variations, as all the ladies present know, and the average is not the same as the period of the moon. It's just a coincidence, most likely. So the only thing is the tides. There are also no lunatics, there's no moon madness, nothing special happens during the full moon or the new moon, despite tens of thousands of years of belief. But we give up our beliefs very, very slowly. Of course, there is one thing that happens during the full moon, and that is that some people who are especially hairy, they change into werewolves. That happens during the full moon, believe me. Because moon is a goddess of water, and so holy water can kill a creature that is created by full moon. And similarly, of course, the silver of the moon, silver bullet, the second way of killing a werewolf. Just so you remember that when the next full moon comes. But what do you see when you look at the moon? See a man on the moon, huukko, as we say in Finnish. And for some reason, the man in the moon seemed to like drinking in all the days. Drink down the moon, moonshine, and so on. So remember, a drink is never inappropriate when the moon is full. Just remember to toast to the man on the moon. Other people saw different things, very often a rabbit or a hare. In different places like India, China, even in the Aztec Empire of the New World, there was a rabbit or a hare in the moon. Why do we have Easter bunny? Well, it's also related to the moon and what we see there. Some people saw very different things. the Tlingit of Alaska, they saw their children carrying water. What do you see when you look at the moon? When was the last time you really looked at the full moon and considered what you are seeing? And of course, the almost scientific idea in the Middle Ages was that the moon is a mirror, a perfect mirror. And so you see the dark areas there, they are not the ears of the rabbit, but they are the reflections of Earth's oceans there in the perfect mirror of the moon. It has to be perfect because according even the ancient philosophers said, everything under the moon, sublunar world, this is our world, the world that's always in chaos, changing, where nothing remains. Everything up, moon and higher up is perfect. So of course also the moon had to be a perfect mirror, perfect sphere, perfect reflection of the not so perfect Earth. Such a shock when Galilei, with his first telescope, looked at the moon and saw it's not perfect, it's not smooth. There are large areas, plains, there are mountains, mountain ridges, and craters everywhere. Not marked moon, anything but perfect. Not even the moon, not the stars, they are all made like we now know, not from the different elements from our here, but we are made of the same stuff as stars and the moon is made, the same 92 elements. Imperfect world, imperfect cosmos, creating all kinds of interesting things. If you look at the old paintings, science fiction movies, the moon was still full of craters like volcanic cones, because most people assumed that they must be volcanoes. It was only slowly that we started to realize that there is a heavy bombardment all the time. The Earth is being hit. It's just that Earth has a climate, erosion, continental motion. So these ancient craters vanish, while on the moon, billions and billions of years after they were created, the craters are still there. Reminder of the violent past birth of our solar system, Earth and Moon. And sometimes maybe something still hits the moon. We may see a flash of light, a meteor hits the moon, throws some moon material up to the moon sky, and some of it falls here to the Earth. A piece of it is here. In my ear is a piece of a moon meteorite. Very rare, more expensive than gold, simply because there are luckily not that many heavenly bombardments anymore here. Not on moon and not on Earth. did you last see darkness? Real darkness, not just an absence of bright lights. Do you remember the night at all? The 13th century Seljuk Empire, Sufi mystic, wise man, trickster, Mullah Nasruddin, of whom the stories are still being told, once entered a tea house and he exclaimed, "The moon is more useful than the sun." Why, Mullah? Asked people. Because we need the light more during the night than during the day. And we did need the light of the moon because that was the only light that we had during the night. A dark night is something terrible, the moonless night. You did not move during the night at all if you could avoid it. Look at, for example, Rembrandt, The Night Watch. We are in the city, civilized big city, but still you don't go out at night unless, like in the Rembrandt's painting, there's almost an army of people fully armed. You do not go out alone, especially not in a moonless night. When the night comes, you go in, you close the doors, gates, shutter windows. You are afraid, you stay indoors until the sun comes up. Except when there is full moon, then perhaps you can do something, travel if you have to, even work. One of the most popular fantasies of the recent years by Patrick Rothfuss, the King Killer Chronicle. The second volume is called The Wise Man's Fear. There, Felurion, the fair lady, explains to the hero what a wise man should fear. A wise man views a moonless night with fear. While she is full, you may still laugh, but know there is a darker half. On such a night, each step you take might catch you in the dark moon's wake. Beware, if you are a wise man or a wise woman, of the moonless night. Or remember, all these folk stories, the Grimm brothers and so on, the most terrible things always happen in the dark forests at night. No light, no hope. You are lost if you're in a dark forest at night. But then slowly we started to conquer the darkness. We did not have to be beware of it anymore. We mastered fire, torches, perhaps 100,000 years ago. In the caves, Altamira, Lascaux and so on, deep underground in eternal darkness, we have found elementary oil lamps there. Just hollowed rocks where you could pour oil a wick and they gave light to the painter who painted visions, whatever there on the walls. Candle, a wonderful but very expensive thing. Signal, claret in Finnish, still the most used light in Finnish houses on the 19th century, before the advent of first gas light and electric light that changed everything. Now the night has vanished. As I asked, when have you last seen darkness? Real darkness, so that you cannot see nothing at all, except maybe the stars. There's light pollution, we are fighting it. There's a challenge to see the Milky Way. I used to ask time and time again, every year, my new students of astronomy, how many of you have seen the Milky Way? Every year there were less and less hands that rose up. How many of you have seen the Milky Way? You are better than my students, maybe I should start teaching again. How many of you have watched the full moon rise? Really see how it appears there on the horizon. It's wonderful. If you don't start believing in the moon goddess and all the things that they told about the moon, you don't have any sense of the mystical, fantastical in your life. It is time to bring back the night. See the darkness also. Not to cast away all the light, it's very useful, especially during the night, as Mullah Nasruddin pointed out. But we do need sometimes also, like we need silence, we need darkness. Bring back the darkness. When we started exploring with mega telescopes our own solar system, we found out that our moon is even weirder than anybody had imagined. It's huge, big. The other moons of the planets, they are just tiny specks in comparison with their mother planet. Our moon is so big that many people talk about a twin planet, moon and earth, a twin. Why? There are also other odd things. Why is the earth rotating so quickly? Venus rotates only once in hundreds of days. Mercury similarly. Why is the earth rotating, spinning like wild? Why does it have a moon that's going so quickly around it? There were different theories. Maybe the moon was captured. Maybe moon and earth formed together. They are really sister and brother, or two sisters if you believe the ancient Finns. Or maybe the moon split from the earth. This is my favorite because I read it when I was a child in a wonderful book about astronomy. The idea was that the molten young earth was spinning very rapid. So rapidly that there was separating a piece of that spinning globe. And that was our moon. There was a wonderful picture because you could even see the scar of the moon still on the earth. That was the Pacific Ocean. There was a picture where you put the moon into the Pacific Ocean, it just about fills it from brim to brim. Nice, but wrong. The theory number 4 finally was found out by Apollo astronauts to be correct. There was a huge crash. A protoplanet the size of Mars collided with the young Earth, maybe a few or tens of millions of years after it had been formed. It was a glancing blow. It took, of course, the collider went into pieces, so did much of the Earth. A lot flew out into the sky, where it formed our moon. That's why the surface of the moon, my little moonstone here, is really similar to the rocks here on Earth. Moon is made of same things, same material, same rocks as our Earth, because originally they were one and the same before the collision. The Earth became rather hot, 7,000 degrees hotter than the surface of the Sun. It was molten, but of course then it cooled down and interesting things started to happen here. The moon also cooled down, and there it is still, going around and around and around in its eternal rotation. This explains a lot of things, why the moon is so big, why the Earth is rotating so rapidly, why the moon is all the time going farther and farther away from us. The collision 4.5 billion years ago is still continuing, and the moon is still slowing down the Earth. The tides create friction, the Earth rotates slower and slower and you'll notice every few years there's a leap second that is added. Why? Because the Earth spins slower and slower, so we need more and more seconds in 1 year. Like a carousel, the Earth-Moon system slowly winds down until someday it stops totally. Fly me to the moon. Centuries, millennia, people dream about going to the moon. Cicero, 2000 years ago, wrote The Dream of Scipio. Plutarchus, Lucian of Samosata, Kepler, the great astronomer, wrote Somnium, a tale of a trip to the moon. Edgar Allan Poe, the famous horror writer, also had his father travel to the moon. Trouble was that there was no way of getting to the moon, so these were dreams, or maybe there was something strange. There were birds that would lift people up to the moon because some assumed that the atmosphere reaches all the way to the moon, so birds can fly there. Also a very old folk legend. Where do birds go during the winter? Well, they fly to the moon. And finally, there was the first scientific idea of how we would actually get to the moon. And that was, of course, in the mid-1800s, Jules Verne, his From Earth to Moon and Around the Moon, the first, so to say, scientific attempt to get to the moon. Of course, it was impossible. He imagined a huge gun, because that was the best technology then, and then there were these 3 astronauts were shot to the moon from the mouth of this huge cannon. Of course, it's not a very nice way. It's technically possible, but it's not a very nice way, at least for people to fly to the moon, because you'll have to be given a speed of, let's say, 10 kilometers per second. It's just an instant, so it's actually the same as if you would be shot towards the wall with a velocity of 10 kilometers and you stop there. Nobody would survive it. But it was at least an attempt that there is a technology that could take us to the moon. And that technology, of course, was rockets. Rockets were very well known. I mean, the Chinese had them at least 1,000 years ago. And if you remember the Star-Spangled Banner, there is, you know, oh see, can you see? In the dawn's no, I'm not going to sing it. There is, in the second or third verse, and the rockets red glare. So the national hymn of America already talks about the rockets almost 200 years ago. They were used for warfare, but slowly people started to think that maybe you could do something else also with rockets. The great dreamer Konstantin Tsiolkovsky in Russia in 1898, he was the first person, not a science fiction writer, but a budding scientist, dreamer. He wrote an article, The Probing of Space by Means of Jet Devices. In the US there was a young guy called Robert Goddard who in 1911 started experimenting with rockets. There were similar people in Russia. There was Hermann Oberth in Germany. All started developing rockets with the idea of reaching space. In 1928, the famous movie director Fritz Lang made a movie, Die Frau im Mond, the lady on the moon, where he tried to get Hermann Oberth to build a real moon rocket as a prop for the film. Well, it was a little bit more expensive than he thought, so it did not really work out, but at least the idea was there. And in the 30s, in all the good science fiction and also bad ones, people were flying to the moon with rockets. They became mainstream. And then, of course, became World War II, the V2 rockets, Wilhelm von Braun, and finally Apollo program. We chose to go to the moon, not because it's easy, but because it's difficult, as President Kennedy said. It was very, very difficult, very expensive. During the first years it was not so bad, but then when it was most expensive, 7% of the national budget of the United States were spent on Apollo program. If it changed it to today's Finland, it would mean that they would suddenly start using 4 billion euros every year just to get somebody to the moon. That is why we did go there, even if there are some nuts who believe that we did not, and it was all trained by Stanley Kubrick. But that's also why we have not gone there anymore. With the present rocket technology, it's simply so ridiculously expensive. But certainly we are going back to the moon sooner or later. How we do it, who does it, it remains to be seen. And if we wait long enough, now this is nice, if we wait long enough, we can build a ladder to the moon. You know all the old folk days, you have a big ladder and then you can climb up all the way to the moon. It doesn't work today, but in a very distant future it is possible. Because, as I said, the moon is slowing down. Billions of years in the future, the moon will stay there in the same place on the sky all the time. Then you can build a ladder to the moon. It's as easy as that, it just takes a little bit patience. There is a wonderful science fiction book by Brian Aldiss, the celebrated English science fiction writer, called Hothouse, that it imagines this very, very distant future where the moon stays there in the same place in the sky. And you know what has happened? Spiders have built a huge web that stretches all the way from the Earth to the moon. A wonderful image and kind of scientific even. Unfortunately, the sun will die before this happens, but in principle at least.
So we'll give it right.
Yeah. Alternative facts, fake news and so on. The mother of all fake news stories appeared in 1835, of course in the United States. There was the Sun magazine started producing a series of articles telling that the great astronomer John Herschel had seen in South Africa with his huge new telescope. This telescope was so big, so powerful, so he could see details on the moon. And guess what? It was full of people. They flew on bat wings, they lived in strange houses. The articles even described what kind of fruits were hanging from the trees on the moon. Of course it was all fake, and finally the astronomers got mad about this, and the newspaper had to admit that, okay, it was fake. Of course, they did not have the kind of presidents they have now, who probably would never have admitted that there was anything wrong with that news story. But could there be life on the moon? When we started to realize how dead, dry the moon is, hope for life on the moon started to vanish rather rapidly on the 19th century. But some hope still remained. I mentioned Jules Verne and his scientific first trip to the moon. He left a little bit of hope. His astronauts were doing the same as Apollo 8. from the Earth going in a figure 8 around the moon and returning back to the Earth. They were on the moon's far side during night time. It was pitch dark, they couldn't see anything, but then there was a meteor shower and they got a glimpse of the far side of the moon. The watchers became aware for an instant of immense spaces, certainly not arid plains, but seas, real oceans, vast and calm. Farther on, but very darkly, as if behind a screen, shadowy continents revealed themselves, their surfaces flecked with black cloudy masses, probably great forests. Maybe on the backside of the moon, there's atmosphere, different conditions, maybe there would be life. Well, there isn't, as we know now. The far side is the same as the front side, it's just a little bit farther away from us. But even the Apollo astronauts, when they finally went to the moon, when they came back, they were not put on the parade first. They had to spend 10 days in quarantine, strict quarantine. Nobody really believed that there was life on the moon, but just to be certain, there were no horrible moon superbacteria coming with the astronauts and killing everybody here on Earth. But now we know, of course, there's no life, there never was. It's dead, terribly, boringly dead. So all the life, if there will be life on the moon, it will come from us. All the three greats of science, classic science fiction, wrote about moon colonies. Robert Heinlein, Moon is a Harsh Mistress, Isaac Asimov, The Gods Themselves, and Arthur C. Clarke, 2001 and other stories. You do remember the black monolith there in Kubrick's movie. But since there's no water, hope for the colonies started to vanish and people started considering Mars, which is much more, I'm not saying suitable for life, but at least possible for life. People forgot about the moon, nobody was interested in going to the moon until 2008, the first Indian lunar probe, Chandrayaan, by the way, that's the name of the Indian moon goddess, found signs of water. Next year, ELPROS, rather more boringly named US lunar sonde, crashed into the moon. The ejecta was analyzed. It was 5% water. This happened on the South Pole, in the eternal darkness where the sun never shines. So there's no daylight there in the deep craters. There's plenty of water there. So now we can start going back to the moon. Because there's water, we can use it. We need water for life. We need water for rocket fuel, for everything. Back to the moon. But who and when? The Americans, their space program changes every 4 or 8 years when there's a change of a president. Sometimes they are going to the moon, sometimes to the asteroid, sometimes to the Mars, sometimes they are not going anywhere, like today for example. While China is progressing steadily. China has announced a long time ago they will start mining operations on the moon. Moon, the surface of the moon is full, for example, of helium-3, the best possible fuel for fusion reactors, when we learn to do fusion reactions. Mining on the moon, hyperloops, shooting material out of space to the Earth, a stepping stone for space colonies, for Mars, colonization of the moon. China seems to be doing it. Just a month ago, China had a soft landing on the dark side of the moon. No seas, no forests of Jules Verne, but they did see it, photograph it. The lander was called Chang'e, again the name, Chinese name for the moon goddess. The rover was called Yutu, Jade Rabbit, again there is the bunny and the moon. And what I find particularly nice as a retired radio astronomer, there was a small radio telescope, radio receiver there. They are starting to do astronomy on the dark side of the moon. Of course, it's not really dark. It gets as much light as the front side, but at least it is shielded from our light, from our radio. It's a perfect place, a long-term dream of radio astronomers, where to place the perfect, huge next generation telescopes. I'm very happy to see that some of my colleagues have been involved in this program. This radio experiment was a collaboration between China and the Netherlands, where I know several of the people who have put this jade rabbit on the moon. We are going back to the moon. We are colonizing the moon. We will see the moon in the sky. We can still see it as a goddess, as a miraculous thing, magical thing rising there, shining. But we can also see it as a reminder that space is waiting us. We are going up to the moon, to the stars. Not today, not tomorrow, not that it is easy, but because they are there.
Thank you very much, Esko and Fabrizio. It was a fantastic experience, and I think everyone appreciated it. And now I think that we are ready to invite our panelists on stage. Atso and Kimi, please come on stage. Meanwhile, we bring the chairs. very informal thing. I mean, the reason why we thought it would be nice to begin a discussion generally about the dialogue between science and arts. We tried to have an example here, which I think was quite successful, of how this dialogue can go along and how science and music can inspire each other somehow. Therefore, I'd like to have the opinion, first of all, of our new entries. And you can talk about what is your opinion, obviously, about this, but also if you want to ask something to Fabrizio and Esko about their experience in sort of improvising, because it is always, I would say, an experiment for us. It is not the first time that Esko and Fabrizio try jamming together. It's actually their second performance together. And we think it is something which we enjoy, but obviously we would like to hear also the opinion of other people and of our public. On this time, the topic was also quite, I would say, inspiring. That is the moon. So I will ask first Atso to say what he thinks.
I was researching a little bit of like in classical music and in also lighter music, the music that is related to moon. And that's one important thing to understand, is that every time that the moon is mentioned, it's probably in the lyrics or opera text or somewhere, so that there's a story behind, and the composer has taken it. There are Finnish leads, songs that have a very dark atmosphere happening at night and lots of love stuff and everything. But then when we take a real classical music, which is always abstract, like one of the most famous is Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata, but he didn't make the name. He didn't give the name Moonlight Sonata. It was one of the critics who heard it and thought that there is an atmosphere of moonlight in this sonata, and the name stuck, but it was not by Beethoven. Beethoven was thinking of absolute music. And this is also very important to understand in any context of classical music, Bach, not related to beliefs, Christianity or something, is that the music in itself, you never can know what is Finnish music, you never can know what is related to moon, unless you have a context, unless you know, oh yes, this is the workers' march, this is the Russian anthem, but you have to know. If it's played to a Mars guy coming from Mars, if there's life on Mars, what do you feel about this music? Finland? They cannot know it. They didn't have something to relate to before. So music in itself cannot be mood. We have to first combine it to mood. And then very few classical composers did this unless they had an opera to write or lyrics.
First of all, thank you for an amazing performance. It was riveting, and I thought that so many things were already mentioned in Esko's talk that you have a full cultural history of the use of moon in culture as well, but also in science. But well, you asked for a question for the performance regarding it, and I thought that you had, of course, the pre-existing music that you were kind of improvising around, but how much did you think in terms of actual improvisation during the spoken bits? I guess you kind of thought about that beforehand as well.
Okay, basically we just decide between one part and the other of Esko talking, what's going around. We choose a song that for the connection with lyrics, was sort of just jump, so we do some standards basically, but only in the middle, and also the way that get in and get out the song was totally improvised. Let's just say, let's put Blue Moon, or Moonless Serenade, or Moon River, but the melody I was flowing on the words of Esko and the mood. And then there is other parts I was totally improvising on the rhythm of the things, and totally interpret, we say jazz. So.
And Fabrizio, you can also comment on Atso's comment, more related to the fact that the music does not have moon incorporated in it. There is a...
Of course, because it's names and levels are experience, but music is also expression of an experience. So who never knows, but the pure music, of course, never relates. It's impossible. You were talking about someone coming from Mars, but someone coming from Mars probably idea what Finlandia is or what, and of course there is not possible to link the pure music. Of course, when there are words, they bring to the thing you wanna significate, but basically music is sort of abstract art that can go everywhere. That's what I think as well. Totally. Okay.
There is, by the way, how a musician knows if the moon is growing or diminishing is that the moon always lies to the musician. When it says C like crescendo, it's growing smaller. And when it says D like diminuendo, oh, it's growing bigger. So I always remember from this that it lies to a musician.
Of course, this might be the reason why it's considered female.
Okay.
One thing that I was thinking during this performance is, of course, the kind of, let's say, tension between the cultural influence of the moon and then the scientific exploration of what is actually real and what is not. And as a cultural historian, I'm of course interested in the amazing amount of imagined stuff that is related to the moon. And of course, as something that inspires artists, and I've studied popular music mostly, so there's the contextual stuff comes very vividly from the lyrical side of things. Everything under the sun is in tune, but the sun is eclipsed by the moon, as Pink Floyd put it in the eclipse from the dark side of the moon. So you kind of have the metaphoric quality of all this mythical stuff that comes from the moon goddess and so on, and also the idea of lunacy and people losing their minds, or the whole werewolf legend thing and madness and so on. And it's very evidently something that inspires new culture all the time. And in that sense, even we have all this dead sand and rock there only, we still have all this wonderful stuff that keeps on pouring to us.
Yes,
Can you use the microphone, please? It's just
okay. Yeah. So I was thinking about this. Doesn't this do? Yeah. Okay, so I was thinking about this.
Which one? No, okay. Use your. It's my fault. Completely.
You just trying to silence me.
Yes, after you say that, it's because we.
Yeah, so I was thinking about this science and music and science and art generally. There have always been people who don't like science because they say that it takes the magic away. That, I mean, we cannot really enjoy the moon anymore. Now we know that it's just a pile of rocks up there, and we have been there, we have defiled the moon and so on. And I think it was the poet John Keats who accused science of unweaving the rainbow. That the damn Newton and others explained where the colors of the rainbow come from, so all the beauty went away from the rainbow.
And the pot of gold.
Yeah, and the pot of gold also. So I never understood this. For me, it's because it's knowledge and feeling go together, that the more I know about the sun, the more I also enjoy all the art, everything, music that is somehow connected to, let's say, the stars, the moon, whatever.
But it's interesting also, as an artist, performing artist, is often that the idea is not to be on stage and be so involved with the performance that you start to cry yourself. It's the idea that you perform and make it professionally, and the audience cries. They get tears in their eyes, not the actor, not the musician. And I remember from school that my mathematician teachers, there were good ones. It was an experimental school. They were singing all in a main quartet. And I understood how near music and mathematics is. And my approach to music is very much like scientific, that how to deal with the relations and so on, and not to be totally like involved in feeling. Sorry.
I think emotions have to be regarded also scientifically. I mean, the whole idea of affecting reality around us and how our brain reacts to sound, for example, it's totally, I don't see any contradiction there. It is mathematics, but it's also emotions, and it's probably the form of art that speaks us most directly, so that almost the history disappears sometimes, and it's like the music sounds and speaks to us. But in terms of kind of more contextual popular music, I'm thinking like a lot of performers do a lot of autobiographical stuff. For example, if Pink Floyd sang about the Dark Side of the Moon, they were thinking about Syd Barrett, who was the original member and lost his mind, became crazy. So there was an actual story behind the lunacy and the symbol moon there, and that's why it was also emotional experience to kind of perform this stuff.
For what I can tell from my experience, one thing is really important to tell, that a lot of artists that overact for no reason. Why? You just have to be yourself. Yeah. You just have to be true. And if you're crazy, you're crazy. And that's what I think about music. And of course, it's, for me, the best thing is, of course, know all the rules, but do the way I want. So that's why this is not related to emotion, it's not to control and over control and no control, but control, no control. That's why.
But what you did right now, that was magic. Of course.
Thank you. I just say thank you.
I think we are ready to take some questions from the audience also. I want to know if someone wants to ask something to any of the panelists about this performance, but also about any of the topics that we started discussing here. So please, if you want to ask something, there is one there, and Matteo has the microphone. So.
Thank you. I disagree that music is mathematics. The mathematics used in music is just mathematics of sound, it's physics. And actually, there is no theory of music, so-called theory of music. It just is a toolbox for some methods, trivial methods and so on. And I would like to continue Almi's good ideas that because music doesn't have any semantics and music is not a language. The composers are most of the composers are just big liars when they give names to their pieces. Do you agree or disagree?
Also,
so, if I heard what I heard, then my hearing is, as an old musician, hearing goes down. But it's like the music is not only in, of course, in just the sound, it's also a construction of music, how you something. But when I compose something or when I perform something, I can get quite strong pictures in my mind of some relations to what has happened in real life or something, but like the music itself cannot tell that to anyone else if I don't put a name on it, I believe. But so many things in style and genre are familiar to people that you can like hint to something. You can hint to the moon Nazis with a very good march or something like this. But it's of course the music in itself, it just sounds and constructions like I feel very strong at it. It's like architecture in time. I know that many people don't agree with this, but there's the possibility always to give an opening to something that you were doing, Fabrizio, with Esko, when Esko was talking, that you were relating and like communicating with your music with him. And then there were the moments when you really played the piece. And of course, because it was more jazz, you are free all the time with the piece, because that's the essence of jazz, the improvisation. But to this semantical side, it's very difficult to go into that. I am a professor, but I'm a stupid professor because I only teach music. I don't have a doctoral background because I'm not a researcher. I just tell them that you hit the first beat down and the second beat left and then right and up, like Panua used to say, to hell, to restaurant, to parliament house, to heaven. And then it goes in 4/4. So just the orchestra needing when and the hammer comes down. That's it. So very different kind of professorship is the artist teaching professorship than a researcher professorship.
Yeah, just to remind about this, it's a very fascinating topic, the mathematics and music and how they are connected. And I was thinking about Galilei. He was also a musician. He came from a family of musicians, and he did not just spend his time looking at the moon. He also tried to invent the perfect musical scale, which of course basically is a mathematical one, which no one can do because simply the music and mathematics, they don't fit together perfectly, like already old Pythagoreans noticed that there are these nasty irrational numbers and so on, sounds that you simply cannot have the perfect sounds in one same scale. You cannot bend the mathematics that way. But there is this the idea that mathematics somehow describes music and also explains why we feel sad or happy or so on. It's been debated, I think, at least for the last 150 years, and I think nobody is still certain about what is the truth in that. But it's still a fascinating area.
I'm thinking about this, giving names to something, giving context, giving meaning, and I think for me it's kind of hard to think about concrete music as concrete music. We already exist in culture always, and we bring our knowledge that we have kind of gained through our life experiences. And you could say that, of course, they used to talk about divine inspiration, like, well, Bach was kind of doing the kind of hard work, but still composing so much stuff and contributing to God or whatever. But giving names to things, giving meaning, talking about your intentions as artists, I think that's a huge part of bringing music to life in other people's imaginations. It's like building bridges between the music and language and so on. Of course, a lot of artists themselves think that these experiences themselves matter. I mean, I was thinking in terms of folk music, for example, Neil Young only records when it's full moon. And that's just an artistic device for him, or maybe he believes in magic, I don't know. But
But I mean, it's what we hear depends on the context so much. So it is in a sense you need to have the names to know what you're supposed to be thinking. I was thinking of this huge instrumental hitter, Mike Oldfield, Tubular Bells, and he was thinking about all these sort of peace, quiet harmonies and so on. And then the music was used in a horror movie. And and then everybody hears it as a horror music after that.
And there is
just the opposite what was his original idea and the feeling he was trying to find.
You mentioned, Esko, you mentioned the Kubrick 2001, and he took Ligete's music atmospheres for with the big stone monolith, and there were so many people who found that so perfect for the scene, and they would never go to a concert to listen to Ligete's music. So that without this context, so like by accident, they were listening to modern music and accepting it because of the context.
Yes, and also the psychological moment of who is listening changed the music. Also the culture, because we talk about music and mathematics, but Indian got another meter totally. Indian music or Arabian music or African. So they have a different mathematics. No, they have the same mathematics. So it's just an approach. And we always see music all around the world. We know that some music never discovered, that from people not civilized, even another point of view. So I just, that in our Occidental system, I just always try to combine the knowledge and the rules with the part of craziness and no rules.
Okay, let's another question. One and then two. Yes.
Thank you. My name is Marko Erima. I enjoyed very much this performance, which was excellent. But I would like to make a comment about the lecture, because Esko Valtaoja pointed out very clearly how the moon has affected the culture of humankind. But you denied the effect of moon on human being, because one of the clearest examples of this is the menstrual cycle, and you said that that is a coincidence. I would argue against that concept, because I think it is quite evident there is a connection. Because you argued that because the apes don't have this synchronization, then biology says that human beings don't either. But human beings are different, because we have had fire, for example. Human being is about maybe 2 million years old, and we have had fire some 100,000 years, and that is an important thing, because I suppose that men were hunting in daylight, and then there was probably a habit of gathering together around the fire. And the fire was a thing where people were together. That is an important meeting point. But because that happened during the dark hours of the day, then what happened in full moon? Suddenly, those women sitting behind, they became visible. And so they could give signals, they could have connections, and so a system of signals, systems developed, and it was important that women were fertile that time when they actually were together, and also it was important that they were awake. And what we see today is that many people say that they can't sleep when it is full moon, and we have a special attraction to living fire, which has an emotional thing to many of us. So this is my contra argument. I'd like to
Okay, I can comment that it has been argued for a long time if the female menstrual cycle, if it really is related to the moon or not. As I said, arguments against are at the other very similar animals like our chimpanzee, to whom we are very closely related, only maybe 5 million years separates us from the bonobos. So they have a different menstrual cycle, and you might make the same arguments that it would have been useful for them also to synchronize with the moon if there is some positive survival value in that. And also that the average is not the same as the one moon cycle. It's a bit different. And the widespread in the menstrual cycle, I think it goes from somewhere like from 50 to 35 days, 40 days, if you take the extremes. So I checked before this when I was looking up at these moon facts and brushing my knowledge. It's still being argued, the connection or the lack of it, but it seemed that the majority of the opinion was that, okay, it's just a coincidence. But definitely we don't know for certain. I don't know how we could prove it one way or another.
Well, today there are so many artificial lights, so there are some 100 years when we have not known that.
Well, it's also that we are also with the artificial lights. I don't know what it does to the menstruational cycle or something, but it certainly affects the way we live and our physical bodies and so on in ways which might not be so nice all of them. So as I said, bring back the darkness also at some point.
Okay, there is a question, actually Matteo first there and then Natasha.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank you of this event that Science Cafe organized. It was great. I enjoyed every minute of it. And also many thanks for the performance, Esko and Fabrizio, of their performance. But my question is to Atso. You mentioned before that all songs with the name Moon are not inspired actually by the composer or the writer of the song, but has become later on as a name for the song. So for me, one of the most beautiful songs in the world is Song to the Moon from the opera Rusalka. Do you know if that was inspired, or Dvorak was inspired by moon, or was it invented later on? Thank you.
I think he was. Because the libretto is so strong in that sense, and usually the libretto comes first, and then the wonderful, it's one of the most famous soprano arias, and beautiful, very beautiful, and then of course the story has its tragic elements also. I think that when a person writes a sonata for piano or for another instrument, there is not so much like the idea that you would be writing a sonata with a title. It's just a piano sonata number this and this, and the key this and this. And if you make a violin like Stradivarius, he didn't name the violins. The names, the nicknames have come afterwards. So the world was much smaller, the cultural surroundings in Europe much smaller. Everyone knew everything, and the nicknames caught on very quickly. But then if we go to what Fabrizio said, how much variety in the world there actually is in the music, that a normal layman thinks that everything that is important has been recorded, which is not true. There's a hell of a lot of music that is really good that nobody has heard but a small circle of composers, friends, and something like that, never recorded. So this is like a false idea, and we have only had recorded music for 100 years, not more. So if you think of like somebody like Arvo Ylppö, going to study to be a doctor of medicine in Germany, and he might like Brahms' Second Symphony, he had to travel to a town where it was being performed to hear it. There were no recordings, no radio, nothing, when he was a student in Germany. So our view of the world is so much different. And the weight point comes always to something that is very popular. But you see it in the names of these pieces. That you know that Mozart was a child prodigy, what's the word? Yeah, and what about Mendelssohn? He was as young when he composed his first symphonies, and Mendelssohn died as young as Mozart, but nobody talks about him being like a child composer or dying young. But it was the way to sell Mozart, and how much music there was written at that time, which didn't come to surface. And now one of the great jobs for periodic music performance is to try to find those pieces that were not, that didn't succeed in becoming popular, but are really good ones also.
Yes, we are the kind of animal who wants to have a sort of one-line description of something, and we don't really care if it's accurate or not, as long as it sort of fits us. There's a wonderful little book I have, it's called, now the only thing we need is a title, which tells about, for many writers, the most difficult thing is they have written a thick novel and then finding the title. And there are sort of this, for the famous novels like War and Peace, Gone with the Wind, and so on, the titles that first the writer proposed were totally horrible. And it's, I mean, if the War and Peace would have been called the Memories of something, Memories of Count Metternich, whatever, War and Peace, it fits. Gone with the Wind, Tuulen viemä in Finnish, how wonderful a title. You get excited just seeing, and I wonder what this gives. And the same with the music, I mean, it's the Moonlight Sonata. Okay, I know what I'm supposed to be expecting, I want to hear that.
Yeah, but there are also the funny translations to Finnish, like the names of some movies or films, which are totally terrible, because they don't believe that the original title would be sufficient, but you have to have Riitta Heilo's Avainpako, shit.
But maybe
Shawshank Redemption.
maybe that's the reason that they are, these big movies, they are not usually translated anymore, that they give the original titles.
At least in Finland.
Yeah,
So we're lucky. Okay, so there was a question, another question.
Thank you for amazing performance and also the panel discussion. It was very inspiring. My background is in classical arts, and to be clear, in the painting mainly. So all my life actually personally I've been very inspired by science, and of course music is a big part of visual expression as well and so forth. But due to all the quite heavy work in theory, research and art history, and yes, well, there's the next generation of us nerds here. Besides the theoretical also research in art history and museology that I've been doing and all that, nowadays I work in gaming. I'm a game developer, and I'm very, very passionate about that because I found a medium where I can actually work with all of this, mixing all of it together, and plus having it interactive, having it as something that others can experience, especially audiovisual, is extremely important to. So that's new, completely new. Well, it's not new as such, but as a discipline, as an art form itself. So my question to you is more like, how do you see, because the music, art, any other art expression, How does the technology and science, you see that now, like shaping next generations of basically how we see, how we explore things, how we actually interact with those? Because I find it fascinating. But do you have any comments to that?
Okay, the power of audiovisual, and especially the idea of with gaming, we are more and more interactive, so we become part of the artistic expression, and we create endings to stories and so on, and that's a huge development, obviously, so that the storyline is not closed, but it's open and it continues. In terms of science and technology, we find new avenues to express ourselves, we find new ways to tickle our senses, and doing these kind of multi-sensory, multimodal experiences, which are more and more powerful, also more and more addictive, and this is the danger we are facing now. I mean, we have huge problems with just the idea how to trust the media when everything can be forced nowadays. I mean, you can put anyone to say anything now, and that's another challenge. But in terms of storytelling, it's gonna be massive, of course, and it will be very different. And of course, our children now are living in a new kind of media reality and kind of are like fish in the water there. But we all, of course, have to be careful that we don't forget the darkness.
Always go back to the darkness.
On the other hand, I have to say that all the senses, when they are like involved in a process of analysis, cannot be 100% if you're not a genius. So what? When I start to play the piano, I listen to the notes. I have to listen to a record. The most can happen is that I can look on the top of the record. I don't see painting, I don't see images. And I think that's really dangerous for the real importance of what we are doing and what the people are learning and the quality. Because now the quality is low.
You mean like this sensory overload, if you combine
Yes.
too much I don't know, music with visuals, with many things. Is it so?
Yes. It never happens that you sit down, shut up, close your eyes and listen to music. So you will always listen to music with other things. The new generation will be not made but good musician if it keeps going like this. And that's the truth for me. And this
Esko was talking about the silence as well as the darkness before. So
there's an interesting thing I remember from early 2000. I was in Gothenburg, and my friend Juhani Raiskinen was the opera chief there, and he took me to see a rehearsal of Mozart Don Giovanni, and then the baritone was singing an aria, and behind him they were moving like things like this and all the time, and then Juhani Raiskinen, old theater fox and opera fox, said that they don't trust anymore us, the audience, that we just want to hear the aria. There has to be something happening all the time behind that. And if we think of the young people today, and this is the problem with mathematics, this science, this art and sports, is that there is lots to choose about, but who wants to really dig into the work that is necessary to become something that I have a friend, 78 years old, who still plays first violin, Dean of Philharmonic, and he said that yes, you can practice, and so, but you have to have the burn in your heart. You have to want to become something. And I also, this connection between mathematics and music is that I see the great joy in scientists when they find out something, that it's exactly the same feeling. And when you compose and you suddenly, now I got it. Very similar to this. Alzheimer father-in-law, who is 86, we were sitting one evening and watching. There was this program of possible traveling to Mars in Prisma 1 month ago or something. And we were watching it, and his short memory has gone. Where is my wife? And I said, she's meeting the culture lady. Oh yeah, she's meeting the culture lady. And after 5 minutes, where is my wife? Yeah. And we were drinking coffee. But when he was watching this Mars program, then he said, why do people waste so much money on this, and why don't they take care of the stuff on Earth? And the next question was, has man been to moon? So he already lost some of his long time memory too.
I was thinking about just a comment on this gaming and so on, which is certainly a new art form. But again, there is, with all the new technological and other advances, there's always also the danger. With all these lights, as I said, we are forgetting darkness. With all, we have music everywhere, we can hear anything we like, anytime we like, and so on. We are in danger of forgetting silence. And with the gaming, it's usual, it's very rapid, it's immediate response, and so on. So we are in danger of forgetting the sort of the long, slow, the famous 10,000 hours you need before you can master something. So I would like to see in the art of gaming and so on develop something really long, boring games that take a long time before anything happens. Yeah, there are some. That is also that should be developed and not just in popular language.
No, that's mainstream stuff.
There is a wide variety, let's say. Maybe we know only some of the games that are the most popular or we are exposed most to. Yes.
The example of very kind of famous game that is a shooting game, it's called Red Dead Redemption, and it's based on this kind of spaghetti western, Wild West thing. And there's a sequence where you are shooting to get across this Rio Grande-like river, and it's, of course, it's like very violent and so on. But after you get across, you get the reward, and it's a very slow horse ride up the hill, and there's a beautiful slow ballad playing. And I thought the genius of that, to stop all that madness and take it easy for a while. And a lot of people have described that this is the crowning moment of the game.
And it's also like, if we think of the performance, Esko, Fabrizio, it's not going to happen again this way. It was not, maybe it was recorded, yes, but there's no chance to immediately repeat it tomorrow, but it keeps on repeating in our heads, and like we are, all of us here, we are very privileged to have had the opportunity to hear it, and it stays in our hearts and in our memories, and we almost remember how it went.
But we
want
to
hear the next one. We want to hear the next time you are performing.
But live performance is different. Then watching this from the YouTube is different than being around, and that's the kind of the magical side of it.
Hello to you YouTube watcher.
Listen to us live.
And you can repeat 1,000 times without any problem. We may find something.
I think that we have now time for the last question, and then we will actually still have some music to conclude. So a last piece from Fabrizio. I think it's something that you have composed.
I want to close with something really something. It's a tango I wrote for it's not named Tango, but as you told, the title comes after a couple of months. Because I wrote the melody and said, I don't know how to give a name, and so give this name. What's that name? After 6 months, I don't know, this is the name. This is Tango, talk about Italian in Argentina. That's all.
But before, last question.
But
And I invite everyone to subscribe to the YouTube channel of Science Cafe.
Yes. Excellent.
Hello, thank you a lot. I have heard that music calibrates how people, humans, think, and I believe that moon calibrates how humans think. So I love the idea that when they took the photo of Mars and they saw the sun, was it rising there, and they make music from that data. So does this kind of science gives you some kind of inspiration to make music? There's a mathematic world there behind?
I make music, I can answer for myself. It's a lot of things. If I can ask you, what's for you look? I will say, I can look television, I can for sure. So it's just depends. Of course there are rules. And that comes from, not from the pure mathematics, but from the analysis of the natural phenomenon, and then we put some mathematical rules to comprehend, to transmit, because there was no recording. And so it's hard to give a title of I don't know.
What inspires you? What is that?
Yes.
This kind of making art, the old saying that 99% of hard work and 1% of creativity, golden creativity. So you have to have all the tools, and then when you use them, like mathematics in music, the surprise will evolve. It will come from that. You give a chance to something happen. We were talking about like this translating the names. So there's from the 30s this old moon song, Silvery Moon. And what do Finns do? They have kultainen kuu, the golden moon. We have to make it better.
Okay, so I think that this is time to conclude, and I would like to acknowledge and to thank again Esko, Kimi, Atso, and Fabrizio. I also would like to thank all the people of theoretical physics who have been helping me, in particular Boris, who is there behind the video camera, and Matteo, who is there, who has been helping with the sound, and Walter as well, and obviously our tool, Aruskaniemi, who is always the person which helps me the most with the Science Cafe organization together with Boris. And of course, I thank all of you. For me, it's been a fantastic event, and I hope that you all enjoyed it. And thank you again, everyone. And I think that we begin we end with the Tango Tano, the experience of an Italian in Argentina, and hopefully we will have again Fabrizio and Esko jamming, maybe next year, maybe in 2 years. So thank you very much again.